All right, so take two. Yes, that's Dakar sitting out there, ready for this week's episode. I'm down on the again. As we can see, there's bridges, traffic, people, it's all happening. Bit of a grey, overcast sort of a day, but so be it. This is still a beautiful part of the world. For those that haven't seen me before, hi, I'm Mark Phillips, and I'm coming to you from France with my Australian accent about the future of travel. This is a weekly episode that we've been updating since the COVID crisis started, and it's a way of showing people what to expect in travelling these days, particularly for those digital nomads and members of Nomad Stays. So yes, beautiful part of the world. And as you can see, this is take two. We switched to Twitter this week to have a bit of a go at this new technology. And travel is a bit like the technology industry at the moment. Everything is very complex. There's gotchas all around the place. I just started taking a video before and then realised I couldn't change the focal point. I couldn't zoom in or out in the Twitter or Periscope live display. Not to worry, we live and learn. So, what's been happening in the last week? Well, for a while there it looked like the pandemic was starting to slow down, things were getting a little back up to normal, and then we're starting to see outbreaks. And the quarantining, reintroductions of isolation, and some borders being cut. The mindset of people is getting frustrated again, and we're seeing an increase in social unrest. You've probably seen, I think we've had 6 nights of protests in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia at the moment. We've seen a bit of an outbreak of shooting and a dozen deaths or so between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Protests are still kicking on around the world. We've had some outbreaks in Serbia, which has sort of led to some of this stuff. Bulgaria seems to be a little bit of a surge at the moment. The Americas still going really tough there. There's been no end in sight just there. But luckily, or the lucky country of Australia, my home, has seen a resurgence down in Melbourne. And you know, it's the second wave as they're calling. I'm not sure they really had much of a first wave, but all of a sudden the country is now getting into a whole series of quarantines and isolations. I guess the message is this is going to become the norm for a while. First of all, if we look at what happened down in Melbourne, there was an outbreak. The authorities and health officials shut down some suburbs. Fortunately, it wasn't fast enough. It spread. They shut down a greater number of suburbs. Didn't happen. Next minute, the city of Melbourne was effectively isolated. The state of Victoria was isolated, and all of a sudden the corresponding states were not accepting people out of Victoria. A couple have travelled through there before, and next minute there's a little bit of an outbreak up in Sydney. People just going about their normal life, the old-fashioned way, shall we say. Social distancing sort of not really been applied or observed that heavily in some of these areas, and bingo, there's another outbreak. This disease is going to be with us for a while. Again, in Australia, you may have seen that they've been shutting their international borders for a number of months. They've just restricted flights into the country, limited numbers of even Australians permitted back into the country. And Qantas has just announced they're not going to be flying internationally until April 2021. Another 8 months away, maybe even longer. So it's a big call to sort of shut the airline down for that long. And then they make a lot of money on the biggest, the most popular airline flight route in the world. The Sydney-Melbourne is the most busy flight route in the world. Well, with Melbourne shut down, the flights are not actually happening that much either. So it's going to be tough times for some of these places. And as a consequence, we're going to see the same sort of thing happen in other places. So what does it mean? It means that volatility is up. It means that you might arrive somewhere on a travel and it's closed all of a sudden. I know a lot of you are not thinking about international. Here in Europe, international borders have been open for a few weeks, and there is quite a moderate amount of business. We've actually got properties, some of our stays up in Germany, for instance, that are booked solid for the next 4 months. I can't get a room to put people in because they have so much business. Why is that, you say? Well, a lot of businesses have not reopened. A lot of businesses have shut down. Some of those places like hostels have been doing it pretty tough. A lot of it is a lot of extra work for a family-run business, and so then they have not re-entered their supply into the market, and suddenly we have a shortfall of properties in some great locations. And as international travel occurs here in Europe, bingo, it's very easily oversubscribed. A lot of that change, as we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, there's a big resurgence for people getting out into nature, into fresh air. So here it is, Wednesday afternoon here in France, the day after a 4-day effective long weekend. It was the National Day yesterday, Bastille Day for many of you know it. And as you can see, there's people out and about walking around the river. You may be able to see the traffic that runs along the Rhone River. Busy today. I was going to cross a bit of a shortcut that we often use. It was just too busy to cross that today, so we had to walk about 100 metres down the track. So life is starting to pick up busier here in Europe. Now, we popped over to Italy on the weekend. Just talking about, we did a little bit of an international travel. You know, it's only the next country, it's only a couple of hours. But on the way back, we found the border was shut for people returning to Italy on a Sunday afternoon. We don't actually know why. There was about 30 vans and police trucks and things like that. There was no obvious crash or something. Bonjour. And there was a traffic jam starting to occur on the highway as people were not being allowed back into Italy. Now, it could have been checks on anything. Alcohol, licenses, it could have been health checks, it could have been anything. So this level of volatility is going to be with us for a while. So some people, and the traditional business traveller and leisure traveller, are probably not going to be interested in tackling that as it's too hard. They've got jobs to go back to. However, the other side, the more adventurous traveller, the digital nomad, the remote worker, they might be really interesting to get out and explore a little bit more of the world. Thank you. You know, knowing that they may go across a border into another country and may not be able to get back. For a lot of nomads, that's no problems because it's a journey. They'll just change their mind and go somewhere else after that, knowing that they can work along the way. So there's going to be some really interesting deals and packages and events and things like that that are occurring. Problem is, how do you research it? A lot of this stuff is being done at the last minute. It's not being marketed, it's not necessarily online. It's like the old-fashioned days where you had to turn up in a place and start talking to people to find out what was going on. Now if I just turn round, you'll see behind me a caravan and a fence and so forth. This is a little bit of a camping park up there. I was talking to the concessionary owner the other day. He's been running it for 10 years. He started doing kayaking on the Rhone here before, and he's gradually expanded. He effectively only has a 6 to 8 week season each year here in the place, and he does a different product for the winter, the snow season around here, because we're in the Alps and so there's a lot of snow. But he's continued to develop this business even more so, even though it's only for 8 weeks a year. More so development this year with COVID. So originally he now does a free tour, so we're about to go join him and do a kayak up the river here, down the rapids and so forth. Like France, it's all very dog friendly, so Dakar will be coming with us. He's a seasoned kayaker. And then he added, then Matthew added tents to his mixture. So there's a big teepee up the back there. He's added caravans to his mixture. Now, these caravans are not necessarily the most flash or modern. I don't know if you can see that one behind me, but it looks like it's a good 40 years old. Now we are, let me think where I'm going to locate us. So Lyon is France's second largest city. Lyon is about an hour and a half drive from here. We're about an hour away from Geneva in Switzerland, but it's not a big city. The town itself is probably 3,000 people, and there's lots of these towns along the river. But even in a little place like this, these caravans are earning 60, 70, 80 euros a night, which is great business. So this year, Matthew has opened up a food and wine van, and he's employed a couple of people from the nearby winery to come in and sell and share their wines with us. And you know, they're moderately expensive at around 5 euros a glass, but pristine and lovely. And all he's doing is just hustling for that extra 100 euros, and particularly on the weekends when it's busier, maybe he takes an extra 1,000 euros a weekend. That's not bad business for, you know, these tough economic times. But he wouldn't have done that business unless he got a bit more innovative. So we're seeing a lot of this innovation occurring around the world, but you can't plan for it. It's very much go with the flow, join the journey, and then grab the opportunities as they are. The great properties, great hospitality people step up. We turned up at a restaurant there in Italy, small country town, just pulled off the road, decided to go exploring, wasn't any planned, no bookings. Turned up after official lunchtime in Italy, and they said, yep, no worries, we'll set your table, we've still got food there, the chef's here, we'll just put something on. And then they came and entertained us, chatted with us, brought out bits and pieces for the dog, as you do in Europe. They're very dog friendly, and we had a thoroughly wonderful time talking with the owner, the waitresses, about the locals, and you know, virtually everybody with masks on, good social distancing between tables, but people were back enjoying themselves and spending money. Now, to get to Italy was quite expensive. The roads, if you haven't been noticing the last 5 or 10 years in Europe, have got very expensive. We had to go through a tunnel, one of the, I think it's the 10th longest tunnel in the world, and it's quite expensive. So the tolls on the road cost us about 75 euro. Lunch, including wines and 3 courses for 2 people, was 40 euros. So the little country town only picked up 40 euros from us. Oh, actually, there's another 15 because we bought a bottle of wine off them as well. So they again, just hustled to pick up a little bit of money from some visitors they weren't expecting, as well as the locals that they normally treat. And you know what, we're obviously talking about Italy and how it's reopened, and maybe it's going to drive a bit more business there. But understanding that there's opportunities that you can't plan, you can't find on the internet, that's one of the great discoveries at the moment. Also means you need to go out of your way a little bit more. Alright, so let's come back to that supply issue. So we were all expecting prices to drop, and certainly they are dropping in many parts of the world. Last week I talked about accommodation prices being about 40% lower, and now we're hearing about shortages of supply and prices going up. Again, we were in Bulgaria last year. We were renting cars for about 100 euros a month. Very, very good price to rent a car. Fuel's not very expensive over there. 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, the price of those cars was 40 euros a month. Today, they are 450 euros a month because it's peak season and they're getting some business. And they're grabbing what they can during a couple of weeks worth of summer surge. So why are they getting that business? Well, because everyone's heading to the mountains and the outdoors. So everybody is not necessarily flying. They might be flying shorter routes, but they don't want to catch buses and trains after that. He's very friendly. Yes, he's very friendly. So the buses and trains and so forth might not be getting the business. It's seen to be a little bit more risky from a health perspective, so people are jumping into their own cars and they're staying not necessarily at hotels, but more the self-contained gîtes, B&Bs, pensions, whatever you want to call it, apartments. We are seeing a range of apartments coming on the market. There's been effectively a 4-year, very positive worldwide travel industry that's created a building stream. We've just picked up 700 rooms, for instance, over in Portugal. Portugal's still pretty hard hit with the virus and isolation and so forth, but you can't stop these developments, and the buildings are coming on stream and they're out there looking for customers, and I can tell you the deals we're getting are just fabulous. So yes, there are great deals out there, but don't expect it everywhere. Don't try and haggle too much, because remember, these people need to make a dollar to survive and being able to even offer you something. But it's a very exciting time in the travel world, particularly when the crowds are a lot lower than what you would have normally expected. It's a great time to go and visit some more interesting places. But just be prepared that things are going to change. Don't take it personally. No good cracking the shits. You just need to roll with the punches. Everybody's trying to help you out amongst a very volatile, fast-moving world. I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to leave you to enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are in the world. Tune in for next week's episode to see what the latest is, and please get out there and enjoy the great fresh air and the outdoors. Cheers for now.